Alright, so welcome back everybody. So for this video, I want to share with you all my top 10 favorite fish from Finspan. So I recently did this for Wingspan and showed my top 10 favorite birds from Wingspan. So I decided it was time to do it for Finspan since I had a lot of fun playing it this year. I've played it several times this year, and I definitely have some favorites in this game. Some of these, most of these I've played many times, while others I've just seen played. So, just, so you know. And there are two animals, I won't mention them right now, but there's two animals that are not going to be on this list that you'll probably be like, what? That's not on your list? So, when I get to the animal that bumped them both off the list, I'll let you know, and I'll show you guys. But for now, let's get started. All right, and let's zoom out a little bit, maybe. Okay, so this is the smooth cheek lanternfish. This is the only fish, the only starter fish that makes it to my top 10 list, and it's number 10, okay? Now, it's a pretty nice one because it's great for engine building, right? And you discard 2 cards to play it, and it's only worth a victory point. But when you think about it, you're getting the 2 cards that you discarded basically back. I mean, you're not getting the ones you discarded back with this one, but you're basically getting 2 cards for discarding 2 cards. And you're also getting a couple of eggs, too. So in a sense, you're getting a few victory points just by discarding a couple of cards. Just by discarding a couple of cards, you're getting a few victory points. Yes, you most likely will be using these eggs to play other animals or turning them into young fish and etc., etc. But the point is, it's great for engine building. It's an easy one to play. It's cheap, yes, for victory points, but it's, like I said, it's worth it. And it's fun to play. This is my favorite starter fish to play if I get it. Okay, so my number 9 is the Blue Streak Cleaner Wrasse. Now, once again, this one is making you discard 3 cards for something that's going to give you 3 victory points at the end of the game. But what's really cool is every time you activate this card, you're going to get 2 cards from your discard pile. So, so basically, the turn you play this, you're not going to get anything. But as you activate this again and again and again, you'll more than make back all of the cards that you discarded to play this. You're going to get back a whole lot more. So basically, in a sense, you're almost playing it for free in that regards because you're getting everything back plus a whole bunch more, and it's worth 3 victory points. It's just a really good card. So that's why it's in my number 9. Okay, so this is my number 8, the Great Northern Tilefish. Now, it really only is going to cost you the egg. Yes, you discard 2 cards, but once again, in this game, the cost of discarding cards to play a fish is almost as good as free. It is almost as good as free. So for something that you only are discarding an egg for, so basically you're losing a victory point, but you're getting 3 more because it's worth 4 victory points. But what's really cool is, once again, this is engine building, and every time you activate this, you're going to get to hatch 2 of your eggs, which is amazing. Now, the reason why I like this card so much is in this game, it's easy to get cards, and it's easy to get eggs, but it is not so easy hatching the eggs, and it's not so easy moving fish around either. And that's because this column is devoted for drawing cards. This column is devoted to getting eggs. And this column is broken in half, with half of it giving you 2 hatches, potentially, and the other half almost giving you 2 movements. I say almost because you're only going to get to do it once per round. So, once per round at most. So, my idea is, while it's super easy to get cards and eggs, it's not so easy getting to hatch your eggs, and it's not so easy getting to move fish around. And so that's why this one's on my list, is because I think getting to hatch 2 of your fish every time you activate this is amazing. I love it so much. and it's worth a moderate amount of victory points for a very low cost. And so that's why this card is my number 8, my 8th favorite card. Okay, so let's go to my number 7. So my number 7 is the Patagonian Toothfish. Okay, it's got a pretty high cost for 5 victory points. You're basically losing 3 eggs, which is like 3 victory points, right? For something that's going to give you 5, so basically you're getting 2 extra victory points for the cost of 3 here. So you're getting 5, but you know, you kind of do the math, you're getting basically only 2 extra victory points there. But then you got to look over here. Ooh, you're getting an egg back. Okay, so now it's 2 and 3. So now it's 3 and instead of 2. I mean, so that's nice. But what's amazing is this one also gives you a card, which is great. It also lets you hatch an egg, which is great. And it also lets you move a fish. It's amazing. Because the great thing is about this is sometimes when you play a card, there's lots of fish in this game that give you the ability to move fish around when you play it. But sometimes you just don't have any fish to move because you don't have any worth moving. So it's a dilemma. But that means that this is not a dilemma because now you're going to get to hatch one of your eggs. Even if you don't have an egg, this gives you an egg. So if you have no eggs, this gives you an egg, which you could then immediately hatch, and then you could then immediately move. So it's very useful, and it's giving you a card, and it's worth 5 victory points, and it can be played anywhere for the cost of 3 eggs. I just call this a super fun card to play. It is so much fun to play because it just does so much stuff all at once. It's definitely more of a jack of all trades kind of fish. And so that is why my Patagonian Toothfish is my number 7, sorry. So this is my 7th favorite fish. Cool. Okay, my 6th favorite fish is the deep sea lizardfish. Now, in a sense, the cost of playing this is going to be the young fish. That's kind of a hefty price for sure, because you already have to have one of those to play it, and you also have to consume a fish that's smaller than this. But that's still fairly easy. There's lots of fish that are smaller than this fish here, and it can be played in a couple of different zones, which is nice. It's also worth a lot of victory points. So in a sense, you're losing a point to get 7 points with this card, because the unfish would be worth 1 point at the end of the game, unless of course you're trying to make a school of fish. So in a sense, you're potentially losing out more than just a point. But what's really cool is when you play it, all players get to do this, including yourself, and that is you get to hatch an egg into a young fish, which means that the cost isn't as high as you would think, because now you're getting your young fish back for something that's going to give you 8 victory points. Not only that, but then you also get to move a fish afterwards, or you can, do this in any order. Of course, you do not have to hatch before you move. You can move before you hatch. That's fine. But the point is, you're, once again, going to have a young fish that you could potentially move to a spot that you want to move it to, and this card is going to let you do so as well at the same time. Of course, it's going to let every other player do so as well, which is fine. It's not a huge deal, because at the end of the day, it's still going to give you 8 victory points, which is a lot. There's not very many cards that give you 8 or more, so it's a really powerful card. And like I said, you're basically getting your young fish back that you're spending. So the only thing is, you're just losing a fish that's smaller, that's probably worth a couple of victory points that you're consuming. But once again, every time you consume a fish, the fish that gets consumed is still going to give you a victory point. So if it was worth 1 or 2 victory points, you're not losing out on much by consuming a smaller fish. And that's kind of the idea, is some players that are new to this game might be hesitant about consuming their smaller fish. But in reality, unless you're consuming a fish that's worth like almost as much as this one is, you're not losing out on much by consuming a fish. And because that's the cost, that's a pretty cheap cost. If you ask me, this is one of the cheaper costs that you could play for a fish this powerful. Because like I said, you're getting it back in a sense anyways. So that's amazing. And that's why this one is my number 6. Yeah, so my 6th favorite fish. Okay, so my number 5 is the pennant coral fish. Now this one is fun. I've had a lot of fun with this one. So basically, it's giving you 2 points, but it's going to cost you an egg, right? And what's really cool is every time it gets activated, every time you do this column here, because this fish has to be in this column, every time you do this column, you can activate this fish as you dive down. And what it means is you get to consume a fish from your hand that's smaller than the coral fish. Now it's 25 centimeters, so this is very small, but it's not the smallest by far. There's several fish that are smaller. Now, of course, you're not always going to have a hand with cards that have fish that are smaller than 25 centimeters. You're not always going to have that, but sometimes you are. But sometimes, again, the card that is smaller than this, you might still want to play maybe, perhaps, right? Because it's part of your strategy. But once again, you might still have something small, and so occasionally you might get to activate this, giving yourself a few extra victory points. I've played this many times, and I think the most fish that I consumed with this coral fish was 4 times. That's not a lot, but it's a cheap play for something that can potentially give you a lot of extra victory points, and something that you're probably going to do a lot. You're probably going to come down this dive site at least once a round, and there's 4 rounds. If you can get this played in the first round, you probably will potentially have a chance to activate this 4 times. And sometimes you might even draw a card before this gets activated, because you're going to draw a card before you even activate this, at least one. Maybe the card you draw happens to be less than 25 centimeters. And then maybe you don't want to play it because you'd rather just get the extra victory point for consuming it. So you just never know. I have a lot of fun playing with this coral fish. And there is one that is 30 centimeters, that's got the exact same ability, but the cost is 2 eggs, and so that's a little harder. That's why I prefer this one, even if it's a little harder to do than 30 centimeters. It's not much of a difference. It's not much of a difference at all. And so that's why the pennant coral fish is my 5th favorite fish in Finspan. Okay, so the leafy sea dragon is my 4th favorite fish. Okay, now I love leafy sea dragons. They're amazing. Amazing animals. So for the cost of an egg, it's going to give you 2 victory points. So that's only like 1 extra point, right? But game end is it gives you 3 extra victory points if you get a school of fish on the leafy sea dragon. Now, chances are, chances are you are going to get at least 1 school of fish. I mean, it's unlikely you won't get 1 school of fish. And generally, I've seen people get like 6 schools of fish. So it's quite possible you'll get 1. And so it's quite easy to get a school of fish. You just have to remember to do so, to move a school of fish onto this leafy sea dragon if you haven't done so already before the game end, so you can get that extra 3 victory points. So it's a cheap card for something that's going to give you, in a sense, 4 victory points. Basically, it's going to give you 4 victory points. Or, I mean, it's going to give you 5, but if you're counting the egg that you're going to have to discard to play it, you're in a sense getting 4 victory points, which is nice. A nice little card that's going to give you 4 victory points for a small price. That's a small price to pay, I say, and that's why the leafy sea dragon is my 4th favorite animal in Finspan. Okay, so we have the blunt nose 6-gill shark, and this is my 3rd favorite fish. Hold on. Yes, it is my 3rd favorite fish. Now, this is the one that takes 2 cards out of my top 10 list. What are those 2 cards that are not in my top 10? Well, that's the great white shark. Yes. Surprise, surprise. And that's also the whale shark. This one I think is way better than both of these. Now, granted, if I don't get the 6 gill and I get a whale shark or a great white, I'm playing one of these. But if I have all 3 of these, I'm discarding these, I'm keeping this. That's the plan. That's the plan. I might play both, maybe play all 3 if possible, but this is the one I want to play the most. And the reason why is, well, first of all, let's kind of compare these 3 cards, okay? So let's move my other 2 cards aside, and let's just compare costs first. So the great white shark is pretty expensive because you're going to have to pay 2 young fish to play it, and you still have to consume a fish, which in my opinion isn't much of a cost. The blunt nose 6 gill shark here, you only have to pay 1 young fish, and like I said, this isn't a cost in my book. So that's pretty nice. Much cheaper than the great white. And if you look at victory points, the great white only gives you 10 extra victory points versus the 6 gill shark here. It gives you 8. So you're still potentially getting more, yes, with the great white, because you know you're basically in a sense getting 1 extra victory point with the great white shark in that regards. However, the when played effect is another reason why this one didn't make the list. You're most likely going to have more cards in this column than you are predators, okay? And so it's easier to lay a bunch of eggs on this column than it is on predatory animals in this game. You might still have some. You might be a player that has a lot, so that might be possible. But the thing is, it's a lot easier to keep track of what your opponents are doing with this one over here on the right. And the reason why I say that is because it's harder to keep track of what your opponents are doing. It's hard to keep track of how many predators they have, because you see both of these cards here. You get to play an egg, put an egg on each one of the predatory fish with this one, and you get to put an egg on each card that's in this purple column here. Okay? It's easier to see which of your opponents have eggs in this column than it is to look at all of their fish and determine how many predators they have that don't have eggs on them already. It's just so much easier. You know, so that's another reason why this one beats that one. So those are the 2 reasons. And now this one, while it is not, it does not consume a fish, you have to discard a school of fish to play this. And yes, you are potentially getting 12 victory. You're going to get 12 victory points here, and plus then some. Yes, but that for me, that's too steep of a price, because you're losing 6 and getting 6. I mean, so basically you're just getting 6 victory points, which isn't that much. When this one is giving me a whole lot more, it's actually giving me 1 extra victory points in a sense, because I'm only losing a school of fish. I might lose an extra victory point, actually, if I'm consuming a fish that is, worth more than a victory point. But still, the fact is, I'm most likely going to have more cards in this column, usually, than this column. And the eggs, well, they go in the green column for the whale shark, but they go in the purple column for the blunt-nosed 6 gill shark. So yeah, I'm kind of nitpicking here a little bit with the whale shark, but generally, I still think the blunt-nosed 6 gill shark is better in that regards. And obviously, the cost is pretty high for that whale shark anyways, while the cost for the blunt-nosed 6 gill is pretty cheap in comparison, especially since it's only 4 victory points less than the whale shark. So that's why the blunt-nosed 6 gill shark is my 3rd favorite fish in Finspan. Okay, so my 2nd favorite fish is the cookie cutter shark. Now this is a free play in my opinion, because you just got to consume a fish that's smaller than it. And while there are some fish that are printed on the board that are obviously going to be smaller than this one is going to give you 5 extra victory points if it's on the bottom row of your dive site, one of your dive sites. So that means you will need to get a fish that's smaller than this, that's smaller than 56 centimeters, and that can go in the twilight, nocturnal, this zone here, I mean, right? The nightmare zone, that's right. It would need to obviously go in the nightmare zone. It would have to be placed on the very bottom row. So it does mean you are going to need to do some planning for sure. But like I said, it's basically a freebie play for 8 victory points. It's basically, I mean, if the fish you're swallowing is worth a victory point or 2, you're still technically getting like 5 or 6 victory points for free just for playing it. It's a nice, sweet little deal. And like I said, as long as you are planning ahead and you are trying to get it to the bottom row and you have found the fish that you want to play in the bottom row, you know, and you have this guy ready to go, then yes, it's amazing. I've had a lot of fun with this cookie cutter shark, and so that's why it's my second favorite fish in this game. And so then, my most favorite animal, or favorite fish, is the giant manta ray. This is my most favorite animal in the ocean, okay? It is my most favorite animal, but its ability is amazing, okay? So it's going to cost you a couple of discards of cards. Sure, that's an easy cost to pay. It's going to cost you 1 small fish. That's not a high cost, and if you ask that is not a high cost. It's a very small cost, considering that this giant manta ray is basically giving you a free school of fish, because when you play this card, you can put all 3 young fish on the same spot, and then they can immediately become a school of fish, assuming there isn't already a school of fish there. But they can do that. So basically, in a sense, for something that is very cheap to play, you're getting like 11 victory points or 10 victory points for something that's very cheap to play, because the cost is only that and a couple of cards, and most likely you're going to have cards you're going to want to you can easily discard. And since it's easy to get cards, and you can still get cards that you've discarded back pretty easily, especially if you played a card that lets you draw back your discarded cards, then like I said, this one's a beauty of a card. But there's another reason why I like this one so much. I was playing the game, and I had a couple of spots where I wasn't really able to get my young fish moved around a lot. And so I had 2 young fish in one column and 2 young fish in another column on the other side and too far away. And so when I played this card, I played a young fish up there with 2. I played a young fish with 2 young fish that were down here somewhere in a different column, and that gave me 2 schools of fish. And then I still got a young fish. So I got 2 schools of fish with this card. That was phenomenal. And in a sense, if you plan ahead and you play your cards right, you could literally just blow everybody else out of the ocean, because you could have 2 and 2 and 2 and then be like, I'm going to be playing this card soon. They're going to find out I'm about to get 3 schools of fish. It's an amazing ability. It's a super fun card to play, and so many interesting things you could do with this. Like I said, it's fun trying to see if you can get 3 schools of fish with this giant manta ray. If you play your cards right, if you are in a sense getting ready to obviously make some schools of fish. So that's why this is my most favorite animal in Finspan. So I hope you guys enjoyed this top 10 list, and leave a like if you guys liked my video, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.